My guest today is Lani Muelrath. She's an award-winning teacher and author who overcame her own lifetime struggle with weight more than 17 years ago when she lost 50 pounds, which she has easily maintained with the tools that she uses to coach others to be successful with weight loss, body shaping, and health. She's been featured on ABC, CBS, The Huffington Post, has been a guest lecturer at San Francisco State University, and is an associate professor in kinesiology at Butte College. She's also the recipient of the Golden Apple Award for Excellence in Instruction. Simply put, Lonnie specializes in helping people transform their bodies and their lives with healthy eating, movement, and mindfulness. Hey Lonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. I am so glad to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. I'm a big fan, and I'm super excited to talk about your book.
Thank you.
And I wanted to get started with this one sentence that really struck me when I was reading through it. And it says, "Will restore your birthright, the pure joy of eating." And I love that because for me, I think, food is well, there's this quote from Dr. Gabriel Cousins, who was kind of my mentor and one of my main teachers, and he says, "Food is a love note from God." And we can have this super joyous relationship with food, but so many people struggle with it. So will you tell me a little bit about this idea of your birthright being the pure joy of eating and how we can get back to having food and eating be this joyful experience?
You could have not opened with a more perfect question because that is like my favorite quote from the
Hmm.
and that section about restoring that birthright and getting away from the angst and the division and the discomfort around food and eating. And it's also the perfect lift-off point for the next book that I'm working at, because
Hmm.
that's what I'm focusing on is our connection and relationship with food. Because many people who have struggled for a long time with that relationship with food and eating in their bodies and have tried to manage it with one diet or another. And when they find their home in a vegan diet or a whole food plant-based diet, and they know that's the best way, they still maybe carry some of this angst and discomfort forward. And it's true, we need to, it's a birthright to enjoy that because we're animals, and enjoying and eating food is, I want to help people move away from the discomfort and the anxiety around eating, because that was a personal struggle for me.
Hmm.
And so having that change in my life is so freeing and so wonderful, and it colors all of your life, that I really like to pursue that as an important point.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. For me, so much about it is about harmony. It's about coming into harmony with our bodies. It's about living in harmony with our minds and with the environment. And when food is put into right relationship, then all these things, we can experience the peace and harmony of having that right relationship, and everything just kind of falls into place.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. And I think this is also one reason that this way of eating, it does bring that harmony. It's not just about your health, it's about the health of the planet, it's about the lot of the animals. And when you are founded in eating that way, you already have a sense of mindfulness about what you're eating. So let's
Hmm.
just take it the next step and deal with some of those underlying anxieties you might be carrying forward from who knows where.
Hmm. Yeah, perfect. Um, so I really enjoyed reading about your journey and how you came to this way of eating. And I want to talk a little bit about your struggle with weight, because I know that that's such a common thing. And it's what gets a lot of people in the door, is looking for a solution to this problem that is so frustrating and so painful. Talk to me a little bit about your struggles with that, and then also how that was resolved.
And you know what? That is very connected to what we were just talking about. Because as someone who is genetically predispositioned, if there is a word like that, predisposed to
Yeah, there you go.
easily gain and have trouble losing weight, I've struggled since I remember going back as far as fourth grade as being aware of a little bit of pudge and what am I going to do about this? And it just went on for decades. Even as a vegetarian, I struggled with my weight. So this connects back to what we were saying, because as a person with a long and colorful diet history, I carried a lot of anxiety and tension just around eating forward with me.
Hmm.
Then, even as I became vegetarian and then progressed to whole food, plant based, and a vegan way of eating, those points became clarified, but it wasn't until I really got the mindfulness connection and how to be at ease and peace with what's on our plate, and to manage these things most effectively with a mindfulness practice, that it all came together so beautifully for me. And you notice I put that in the book. It's been in all of my books. Whole food, plant-based diet, a little bit of exercise, and also the importance of mindset and what's going on inside.
Awesome. Yeah, and mindset is a really big topic for me as well. It's something I'm really interested in. So
Oh,
we will definitely dive into that in
yeah.
just a little bit. Yeah. Can you relate the story that you tell in the book about the paraffin incident? Um, because I have so many, like, I really struggled when I first went plant-based, and I have all these stories. I have the Marionberry pie incident is mine, where
Oh.
I was 100% raw for 3 days, and then I opened up the fridge, and my roommate had brought home this like delicious Marionberry pie, and I ate like half of it for dinner and half of it for breakfast, and that was like, like for a lot of people, the health journey is kind of has some ups and downs, especially in the
Thank you for
beginning.
pointing that out. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it really helps to hear like that we're all human, and that we all really struggle with that, and that's why I like to tell my stories too, because I mean we can definitely fall off the wagon, and so many of us do, and you understand that that's not the end of the world. It's just one little data point, one little blip along the path. I think can be very helpful.
Yeah, and I think also sharing your humanity is important. Just as I'm always very transparent about, what my struggles have been and what I continue to work on. But the paraffin incident, I got to look back to. I was still eating as a vegetarian, and I was still trying to find the magic bullet combination of foods that was going to help me lose and manage weight loss. My weight went up and down, and so I, believe it or not, tried the vegetarian version of the Atkins diet, which is, just eat protein and maybe a half a gram of carbohydrate somewhere along the way. And, I'm not proud of this. I don't think it was a brilliant decision, but it puts me in a place of commonality with how many people that come to me know exactly what I'm talking about with that diet. So the problem was I became so starved of carbohydrate because you can have so little of it, and I was just craving anything, just give me a bite of fruit or something. So I looked through the cookbook that came with the diet plan, and there was a fudge recipe. And I thought, how can there be fudge? Fudge is full of sugar and all kinds of things. So I looked, and the basis of the recipe was in paraffin. That's what gave it its substance in bulk. And you threw it in a little chocolate, and I think it must have been artificial sweetening or something. I mean, it's a really disaster, not meant for human consumption.
Right.
And I just clawed my way through the whole thing because it was so good to get something sweet and something chocolate. And I still have that chunk of the rest of the paraffin. This was decades ago, but I use it to kind of wax the sliding doors the house. But that's a story that I think I probably share that with others.
Yeah, and I really liked reading about that too, because it kind of highlights as well, when we're trying these different diets, we're really not in alignment, and we're really not in harmony with health and with nutrition and
Yeah.
with living in a way that really supports this idea again of harmony.
Oh, I
Uh,
love the way you put that. Yeah.
yeah, because that's what we do. We look for all these like tips and tricks, and we're trying all these different things. We're kind of trying to game the system, but there's such a natural, holistic way that the human body is designed. And when we follow that method, just eat whole foods, eat mostly plants, and everything kind of takes care of itself. And so it's this larger picture of health and living in a way that really supports our health and well-being. And weight loss becomes a really excellent side effect of that, but it's not necessarily, we're not trying
Yeah.
to game the
Yeah.
system and find these silver bullets. We're just really making our life about health and harmony.
Well, I'll tell you what, I just put together the survey that I'm sending out to inform the manuscript of my next book, and I hope that you're going to want to fill it out because you're just a perfect person for this. Can I send it to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, that'd be great. So let's just dive right into mindset. I had a couple other questions, but we've kind of brought that up, and I really wanted to talk to you about it. So why is mindset such an important piece of the puzzle? And what can we do to change our mindset so that we're really gearing up for success, that we're supporting
Huh.
our journey?
Yeah, this is a good place too to make a little bit of a delineation between actually mindset and mindfulness.
Hmm.
Mindset means, how we generally approach something. But what really made the difference for me was learning a mindful connection with not only what I was eating and how I was eating it, but how my connection with food, eating in my body was colored by my past experiences, by who knows what. So by learning a mindfulness practice, I was able to get in touch with the sensations in my body and the habits of my thinking and mind that derailed moving positively forward. That really got me into trouble over and over again. So just being, mindset, many times people think that's equivalent with motivation and you got to be all keyed up, and no one can do that all the time. It's motivation is very fickle, but having a mindset and a commitment to learning more mindfully so that you can unravel all these anxieties and tensions and disconnects and misinformation and doing things like eating paraffin fudge become possible. And that's when the door to freedom and having this joyful, happy, at ease relationship with your food becomes possible. That's what happened for me.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about, so let's specifically talk about mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
What does your mindfulness practice look like? So is there a meditation component
Yes.
to that?
Yes,
Can you walk us through that?
yeah, I learned a mindfulness meditation about 20 years ago, and what it is it's also called insight meditation or vipassana meditation, where you actually train yourself on a daily basis, which is what I do, to simply, you start by connecting with your breath, which is because that is in the present. The whole idea with mindfulness is let's be here now
Mm-hmm.
instead of worrying about the future or connected to the past or getting all tied up with your history, with whatever it is that you're trying to move forward with. So by taking that time to just focus on the breath and the sensations in your body, you learn, which also take place in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing yourself back to the present and back to the present. And the beauty of this is not only is it calming, and it's also been proven, it's used all over the country in a verified mindfulness-based stress reduction is based on this too. You've probably heard a little about that. It's been used in hospitals. So it does that on one level, it reduces stress. But another is it allows you to be here in the present moment without the entanglements of all the history that you brought forward.
Mm-hmm.
So and people will say, well, why can't you just eat mindfully? Just pay attention to what you're eating. And that is an important part of it. However, that's like there's training that you can do to make yourself more mindful in every engagement in your life. And that takes training. It's kind of like asking to be, go run a marathon without having figured out how to take a walk. You want to not wait to the moment of crisis or conflict before you try to figure out, how do I be mindful? You practice being present without letting your mind go with all the stories that we
Mm-hmm.
have. And our culture and media are counter to this. It's all
Mm-hmm.
go, do, acquire,
Mm-hmm.
accomplish, be productive. And yeah, there's a balance that has to be in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with how fast technology is speeding up, how fast the pace of life is speeding up, I mean, I think it's absolutely essential, to have peace and balance and quiet in your life. To have a meditation practice at this point in time, I think is so important.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Well, we're in alignment there.
Yeah. Is there any specific recommendation of, if someone's interested in starting a mindfulness practice, starting a meditation practice, of a class that they should take, or any particular teachers or podcasts or resources that you recommend?
I mean, until my book's ready. Because
Yeah.
it is, I have just signed for it, so I'm just starting to write it, and that's why I want the research. And I have been teaching this in private practice for several years because I found it was the key factor. Once someone has the food down, once someone knows how to move their body, really, don't we, unless we're brand new to this way of eating, we pretty much know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And many people get so obsessed and sidetracked and always online trying to figure out the latest variation. But basically, we know what to do. And it's good to stay, up with the health things. But you know what I mean? It's like we can get obsessive compulsive about
Totally.
it. But there are lots of online resources if you just simply Google mindfulness-based meditation. There are some online programs. There's several videos. Anything by John Kabat-Zinn, who happens to be the head of the program at the in Massachusetts for the mindfulness-based stress reduction program there. There are centers around the country where you can actually go and learn, but there's a lot online that you can do too.
Mm-hmm. Great. I also want to mention there's this app called Headspace,
Yes.
which is kind of a nice introduction. I don't personally use it, but I know a lot of people have found a lot of success with that. Um,
And that isn't that where you listen? It's kind of like holosync where you listen and it gets you into a wave state that,
mhm,
yeah, it is a good way. I think you're right. It's a good introduction. It calms you down, helps you maybe you'll manage stress and be more patient through the course of your day. And I'd like to see that as an entry point and then move to the mindfulness meditation if possible. Anything
mhm,
that gets you here and centered is good.
right. Yeah, and Tara Brach also has, she wrote this book called Radical Acceptance, which is kind of an introduction to mindfulness.
Yeah.
And she has some good guided meditations as well. So we talked about food, we've talked about mindfulness. So let's step back to mindset a little bit. So let's differentiate between mindfulness and mindset and talk to us a little bit about how we can create a mindset that sets us up for
Yeah.
success.
Yeah. Well, in the plant-based journey, I have the front section is all about the food and the 5 universal steps of transition to plant-based nutrition, and then I have the key supporting players, which are the fitness and then the frame of mind section. And I want to point this out in answer to your question that in the frame of mind section, or getting some degree of mastery over your habits of thinking and patterns of thinking, I do introduce the idea of mindfulness meditation, but I also have several sections of step-by-step breakdown about how to use incremental changes and make micro changes to change behaviors. And those are directly tied to creating a mindset about tackling any kind of problem or changing your life in any dimension, because it gives you specifics about things to do. And this can really help with that mindset part, which means, okay, I want to make this change. But many times, like people will say, I want to, eat a whole food plant-based diet, but they're currently eating a standard American diet. And in their mind, they can see across the Grand Canyon to what it might look like, but they don't know how to get from here to there.
Mm-hmm.
And that can kill a mindset and it can kill motivation. So if you look at the incremental changes, which is where that 5 steps came in, and see where can I next go, then you can focus your mind on moving forward with pragmatic steps like that. And I think that assists the whole mindset things because things don't look overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I go into that very much in the master psychology section in this book about how to make incremental changes and move yourself forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And I think it's so important because it's so often left out of the conversation. Like you mentioned in the book, we're given the science, we're given, these doctors that are recommending a certain way, but we don't necessarily know how to do it within our reality. Yeah. Like, how do you close
Yeah,
the gap?
reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. So, and that's why, this is the first book like this written by a teacher because
Mm-hmm.
I taught 6th grade for 20 years. So I'm practicing how to take a complex problem and break
Mm-hmm.
it into pieces so that the student, which is all of us, can move successfully forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I loved how you brought that up in the book. I think it's so key. Um, so we've on the show we've had a lot of guests that have talked about kind of like the transition stage, and what I think is really different and interesting about your book, as you mentioned, are the key supporting players and the emphasis that you put on that. So let's talk a little bit about fitness, because last time on the show I had these ultra athletes on, and we were talking about kind of the mechanics of being.
But yeah,
Yeah, it was really exciting. Like at the very top levels of a certain sport, like cycling or ultra running, how you can do that on a plant-based diet. Um, so let's talk about for the average person. Let's say someone is struggling with a health issue, or they have some sort of chronic condition, or are overweight. They're starting to change their diet. What's the first kind of steps that people can take to introduce fitness into their lives? And at what
yeah.
point in the process do you do that?
All these answers are bubbling up for me. And I was just presenting at Health Fest in Texas, and they asked me to be part of the athletes experts panel. And I go, well, okay, because I have a fitness book and my
Mm-hmm.
degrees in kinesiology and physical education and all of that. So I said, I made it very clear at the start of the session because all these, ultras were around me, and Josh LaJaunie was there, and Garth Davis, who's now running, marathons. And I said, just to qualify, I really consider myself more of a fitness enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though I have the background and training for it, but the point I like to make, and I make this in the plant-based journey, is that we all think of exercises. It's going to give you a better figure, and it's going to help you burn some calories and build some muscle and give you a stronger heart and on and on. And it does all of those things beautifully, but it misses the the lead with what exercise can do for you, and that's because of what it does for your brain. So as you know, as I go through in the plant-based journey, the minute you start putting one foot in front of the other, there is this biochemical cascade that takes place in your body that mixes with a protein from your brain, and I go into it in great depth, that makes neuroplasticity happen and increases neuron growth, which is essential for lifestyle change. Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely would.
You know, so I like to say if your feet are stuck in cement, your brain's probably stuck in cement. And I'd like to offset the question. You know, people will say, should I start with exercise or should I start with diet? Which should I do 1st? And I say put them together, because you're going to be so much better at being successful with implementing dietary change if you just move your body. And it doesn't have to be hardcore. Go out and walk for 20 minutes a day and see what a difference it makes.
Cool. And is that the kind of micro change that you recommend? So if someone wants to start with exercise, just get out and walk a little bit?
Well, it depends on where you are. If everybody is individual about where they are with their fitness and their exercise. So if someone who was used to just, walking every day, but they spend the rest of their time just sitting, which many people do, computers, you'd sit down and 4 hours later, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And we know that the physiology of long extended periods of sitting are very severe in terms of health consequences. So I will suggest people start by not sitting so much. And if they're doing a certain level of exercise, how does that fit into with a balanced exercise program, which I lay out in the book, so you can see where you may need to improve. But big is not sitting so much. And this goes all the way back to one of the people that I work with, Sandra, who came to me, and I talk about Sandra in the plant-based journey. This is a good example of micro changes, an extreme example of how it can work. And she said, I want to change my diet, and I know I need to exercise, but I weigh 300 pounds and it hurts to move. What can I do? And she just felt at a loss. So I asked her, okay, she's not doing any exercise now. Most of her time is just sitting or reclining. She has a desk job. I say, well, can you stand? And she said, yeah. So we started with, I said, can you stand for 5 minutes today? And she started with that, which sounded to her like, oh, brother. Or I tell people, who couldn't do that? Well, for her, that was huge. And from there it built. And after a month, she was walking half an hour a day. And now she's down 100 pounds. And it started with that, not dismissing the incremental small first thing that she could do that was a little bit of a challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because so often we think, like when we look at where we want to be, we think about like having to cross the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
And for some reason,
unsurmountable.
Yeah, and for some reason we don't think that taking a step is the way to get there, or it just doesn't feel like it's enough. But I totally agree; those small changes can be so powerful. And there's a lot of research around the idea of tiny habits now in terms of like the best way to start behavioral change. Yeah. So like taking those baby steps, we might not think that they're much, but they make such a difference. I was curious, what's your favorite recipe from the book and why?
Oh gosh, my favorite recipe, I kind of think of what comes to mind of favorites that have come back to me, which is that like the portobello pot roast has been a big hit. But here's the probably the favorite. The single biggest hit of this book has been the recipe templates that I have. Have you tried any of those yet?
I haven't tried them, but I read through the book, yeah.
Yeah, when I first contracted with my publisher and we had our initial conversation, and he said, these templates you have in here, they're really good. I think they're going to be really a big deal. And I thought, well, okay, that's just the way I cook, because I'm a real lazy cook. I'm used to, I take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And you probably do a lot of things like that too, but you're used to doing that. So even though it looks simple and elemental, for people who are not used to putting foods together in this way, those have been a lifesaver. And it shows that you don't have to be a fancy cook to eat like this. And the recipes in there, the savory vegetables template, I must use that probably 7 times a week, if not more, because it's a great, simple way of putting together vegetables. So I'm going to stick with the templates as being the most positive step forward for anything. But there's some really yummy stuff. I know the double chocolate cherry truffles are pretty good. And there's no paraffin in them. I promise.
That's great. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of the most, I mean, by far the most popular resource that we've created is this thing called the Chipotle method. And it's essentially this template where you can take all these simple pre-existing ingredients and put them together in different ways to create meals, whether it's a
Very good.
salad or a
Brilliant.
bowl. Yeah, because again, there's this gap between all the fancy plant-based recipe books that you see, which I love. I think they're totally great, but they can be so overwhelming and it's so many new ingredients for people. And to be able to show like really basic templates that allow you to introduce a variety of foods and put them together in a way that's always delicious, it's always tasty, it always works, I think is so helpful. So
Yeah. And I'm sure you have helped and continue to help a lot of people with that very basic. So it's like the Chipotle thing, like, right? Here's the beans, here's the greens, here's the
uh-huh.
shell, here's the
Yep.
tomatoes.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly. You just
very
got all
good.
these ingredients that are already prepared,
Yeah.
and you just choose a different form for it, whether it's a salad or a bowl or taco, and you just go down the line, pick what you want. And it works pretty well too because we have a lot of readers who they might be trying to go plant-based, but their family isn't necessarily. And so they're trying to adapt to a variety of tastes within the
Yeah.
household. And just to be really practical and really functional and offering solutions for that, I think is really important.
So people can pick what they want and you're kind of in control of your own plate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So we've talked about food, we've talked about mindset, we've talked about mindfulness, we've talked about movement. I mean, for me, that really is all, you've encapsulated all the most important elements into one pretty awesome guidebook. So
Oh, thank you.
here we have it, the plant-based journey. Nice, you've got it too. I should hope so. Yeah, and just, I mean, for me, based on your experience of helping so many people transition and really understanding the reality of how to help that change happen, I mean, this really is a pretty awesome handbook for transforming your life. So I just want to recommend it to all of our
Oh,
viewers and our readers out there.
I'm
And
thrilled that you enjoy her. So that's really nice feedback to get from you.
yeah, absolutely. Final question, and then I'll let you go. If someone wants to learn more or to buy the book, what is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah. Well, to reach me, you can go to LaniMuelrath.com, which is just myname.com. Or if you don't know how to spell my name, you can just go to theplantbasedjourney.com. It'll all take you to the same place. As far as picking up the book, the best that either Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or any local bookstore. And even if they don't have it in stock, you just give them a call. Most places will just order and get it to you, of course, at no extra charge. So tons of ways to get hold of the book, wherever best books are sold.
There we have it. Well, Lonnie, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, me too. Very fun talking to you. I have a feeling we're going to connect more in the future.
Yeah, we seem to be very aligned in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways.
Oh,
So
and I'll
it's very
send you my
cool.
survey.
I'd love to. Yep,
Yeah.
I'd love to check it out. Cool.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Matt.
yep, thank you, Lonnie, and thanks everyone for watching. We will catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.